Hello, everyone. Thanks for tuning in to another episode of the Canon. I want to start it off with 8 minutes and 46 seconds of silence in honor of George Floyd and everyone else who's lost their lives at the hands of police brutality. I'm going to start the timer now. for anyone unfamiliar with as to why we just did that, 8 minutes and 46 seconds was how long that police officer had his knee on George Floyd's neck when he died. So, if you haven't already gathered, it's going to be a bit of a heavy episode. But we are still the sassy, sefty boys. We are still the sassy, sefty stands. The
Look, I don't want to say you blew it.
Listen, it's a tongue twister, all right? But regardless, it is Brandon speaking right now. That is me.
I'm Frank.
I'm Jesse.
Did you guys forget who you were?
Yeah, a little bit.
Are you nervous? It's not racist to talk.
No,
It's not about nervousness. That wasn't the conventional way we normally launch into.
Yeah, I know. Things are a little different today. We're
Yeah.
switching it up, but I want at least a little bit of familiarity.
Yeah,
Don't
no,
run
I
away
know.
just yet.
It's reeling from the silence.
Yeah, the silence. A lot of time
There's
to
a lot
think.
of thought that goes into
A lot of fucking thought that goes into it. Yeah.
This is literally unbelievable.
But today, this podcast isn't unlike any other podcast in that we are talking about a movie. We are talking "Do the Right Thing" by one Mr. Spike Lee, who directed.
Hello, Spike. It's us again.
Hey, Spike.
Thanks for listening, as
Yeah.
you always do.
Wait,
Yeah.
everyone, welcome.
Spike Lee! Yay! You don't have to speak though. You can just say it.
It's pretty great just to be in his presence.
Yeah, he's
honestly.
gonna nod
Which
if
we
he's
have
liking
been
it
in
or
real
not.
life, not a joke.
Yeah,
It's
actually.
true.
Matter of fact, Mr. Lee, I hope you are listening because you're in this room with headphones. Hello, just nod. Thank you.
We didn't have an extra microphone, and
Yeah,
I mean
sorry.
we can't take the mics away from the host.
Your
Yeah,
presence is all that's
I
necessary.
feel like Do the
So,
Right Thing is the proper platform. You don't need to be on this podcast.
Exactly. You
We-
are.
We'd love to have you though one day.
Yeah, come on.
Bring a mic next.
You're invited.
These three Midwestern boys with another Midwestern boy. Shout out Nick. Hello.
Yes.
Past guest.
Friend of podcast.
We all made a
Hot.
trek, 11-hour drive, 10-hour drive.
12.
Sure. To New York to attend Do the Right Thing's Black Party last year.
Specifically the Bed-Stuy neighborhood in which Do the Right Thing was shot in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
And this was the 30th anniversary?
It was the
Last year
30th anniversary
yeah.
last year. We're coming up on the 31st anniversary this year, which is unreal that it was only about a year ago, almost to the day, that we were walking
Oh, yeah.
through the neighborhood, standing in the presence of Spike Lee,
Like a
seeing Chuck D perform Fight the Power in person.
That was wild.
Unreal. That was even before I owned the Criterion Blu-ray of Do the Right Thing. That was before it even came out.
yeah, it was the
I
Haven't
thought it
even
was
owned-
released for the 30th anniversary.
Well, it did come out for the 30th anniversary, but it was released following the block party. I did look because I was curious if we were actually present for the 30th anniversary of Do the Right Thing in
Mhm.
Brooklyn or in New York, and we
was in
weren't.
Brooklyn.
It was in July. I think it was like mid-July that it was
Oh.
released. So at the height of the summer heat, in reality, too, given that the movie takes place on the hottest day of the year.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. It was late July that it was released.
Okay.
That makes sense.
Right around the 30th anniversary.
Yeah. Like a month before.
I mean,
But,
if you got to take the whole neighborhood, you're going to have to do some organizing, and you're going to have to pick a day that coincides with the city planners,
yeah.
Probably. I don't know how any of that goes. I've never organized an event like that.
I mean,
Hopefully one day
he
I
does
do.
it. He does it every year. I'm sure it's just convenient timing.
Yeah.
Is it happening this year? Like, obviously.
We
I
talked
don't
about that,
think
didn't we?
so.
I would assume that they're postponing it. I mean, Spike Lee is a big advocate for not even going to movie theaters and not reopening theaters. And plug, Spike Lee has a new movie coming out.
Friday.
Well, it will be this
Ah.
Friday. We are recording live in our ears and not in yours.
9 years.
We're smoking movies and we're talking weed.
True that.
And hey, as just a reminder for any of you who have listened in the past, if you don't like Heat, you have to go.
You have to get out.
It's okay if you've never seen it.
The point must be made in every podcast for a reason, and it is because if you don't like it, you won't like this. We're saving you time.
Honestly, if we missed it one episode and then you managed to sneak on by, you'd be in too deep. You'd already love us after the first one.
But
And then it's nothing but heat from there on out.
the new Spike Lee joint, Netflix for original film, The Five Bloods, being released June 12th, which will be this past weekend by the time we release
If you
this.
haven't watched it yet, watch it.
The trailer.
I will have definitely seen it
Yeah.
by that point.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But by the time this is out, oh boy, I'm curious
Yeah.
how I'll feel. It's
Trailer
very long. It's
looks
like 2
cool.
hours and 30 minutes.
Is it?
The plot alone sounds amazing.
Very interesting. I wonder what he's gonna say.
This is his follow-up to Black Klansman, correct?
Yeah.
yeah,
Another very affecting film, especially in theaters. Brandon, we saw that together.
we did with Mr. Nicolas.
With Nick as well.
Hey, Nick.
Frank, unfortunately. I don't
That's
know where you
another
were
one
that
of
day.
his movies that upset me when I first saw it.
It was
and
pretty
I
upsetting.
had to think about it.
Well, I guess that leads us to a good point to talk about the experience and going to see Do the Right Thing for the first time, because well, not for the first time for me, for you.
Well, first time for me.
It shocked
and,
me that you had never seen it.
Yeah, I remember actually in high school, when one of the first of the many movie conversations that I would have with you boys, Frank asked me if I saw Do the Right Thing, and I was like, "No, what's that?" And he goes, "What? You haven't seen Do the Right Thing? You're black." And then that's when I was like, "Oh shit, did I fuck up?" Turns out I did. Definitely, this is a movie that I wish I had been seeing for my whole life. And if that weren't true, then yes, you should feel bad about what you said.
Yeah.
But it is
Still
true.
do.
It is a necessary movie.
Still true.
Well, I agree with that wholeheartedly, but I will say that over time, my feelings for this movie have only grown more and more affectionate.
Yes.
So
Yes.
I think that it takes seeing it again and again to really get familiar with these characters in the world and kind of embed yourself into the experience a bit.
Yeah.
But I think that Spike Lee is actually inviting you to do that. This is not an
mean,
exclusionary movie by any stretch. at
He's-
all.
he's nodding.
I literally would watch it again like tomorrow. Like I feel like
Same.
it's just something that
Same.
I could watch again and again and again, and I could still gather new things.
Despite the fact that it does
The
get
Spike.
morbidly brutal by the end, emotionally. And we talked about that even going in and even before recording this podcast leading up to the recording. That the whole time we've all seen this movie before, but this was only your second time, right, Brandon?
Yeah.
And Frank, you've seen this umpteen times.
Yeah.
Frank
Easily.
introduced this movie to me back when we were early teenagers, and I definitely loved it back then. But as I said, it took me a while to fully acquaint myself with the movie and the way that I feel about it now. I just this year bumped it up to the full 5-star grade. I don't know what totally alienated me from it, like at all in the past, but I think maybe it was just an ignorance thing.
It's a movie that
who
reflects on
knows?
experiences.
I think
for
also
sure.
a connectivity thing, being that I come from the whitest of white cities and the whitest of white, upbringings. It doesn't help my understanding of the film at a younger age.
You have
certainly.
led a Caucasian life. That is true.
No doubt. Gotta own that shit. But I think this movie resonates on a level that is timeless in a way that goes beyond that word even. And I think that it's maybe the most complicated drama that exists in the lexicon of classic movies, if you even want to rank it up in something like that.
Yeah.
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 Classified under that kind of genre.
And I just want to, I guess, clarify for anyone that might be a little confused as to why we're taking another sessy break with no warning, as we do usually with cats. It's because we have been recording these episodes pretty close together and pretty like as close with the times as like we ever have in terms of like recording of this podcast since the beginning of the year.
Mhm.
And it's just as a group collectively, we didn't feel that it was right to record an episode with the current state of the world without talking about it. And then it also didn't feel right to just do an episode of the Chronic Canon about the current state of the world, because we are first and foremost a movie podcast. But
A movie what?
podcast. I said pot. The D and the T
I'm just
sound way
checking.
too close together. We messed up.
Hey, when
I'm
we
just
mumble, when we get high.
That's
It
also
happens.
true, and we're very high because we
Yeah,
got
nothing-
too
nothing's
many-
We're smoking
different.
movies and we're talking weed.
We got
and
too
today
many
we're smoking
warnings.
Do the Right Thing.
And we decided that Do the Right Thing is not only a movie that is important to all of us individually, but a movie that is so tragically reflecting of the very world that we're living in right now. So we thought
It's-
this is the best way that three mostly of privileged Midwest, mid-class young men could talk about the current state of the world and not just add to the slew of things that are being said about it, because it's everywhere right now, and it can get nauseating just for seeing the same things repeat themselves over and over again. But it's also important because the world has been silent for way too long. So this is our way of speaking on it while also staying true to what the kind of canon is. Because Spike Lee in himself is a fucking dope ass director whom we all like, right? Right?
Yes, definitely. And despite the fact that I
I'll
am
put
not,
the gun down now.
if you've listened to this podcast before, which if you haven't, welcome.
Yeah.
Welcome.
Hello.
Rough one to start, but you need to be here.
Yeah.
Don't leave now.
Yeah. Don't be a dummy.
So if you
Fucking
haven't
stay.
listened before, Jesse,
I'm Frank.
Brandon.
Jesse, have not been a very religious person at all for the vast majority of my life.
Mm-hmm.
But I would say that the only way that I feel comfortable in speaking in air quotes on this issue at all is to just basically preach the gospel and pass the literal gospel along and talking about Do the Right Thing, a movie in which Spike Lee perfectly captures the zeitgeist and says pretty much all the right things from almost every perspective possible. It's kind of mind-blowing that this movie exists and that it was made when it was made and that it maintains its potent power to this day, and I think we'll never lose it.
31 years old.
31. So 89?
Yeah.
89.
I literally can't imagine being Spike Lee. I keep talking about it. Spike, trying to empathize with you. You're just being weird in the corner.
He's still here. He is.
Yeah. He's hanging. I'm sorry. This is going to be weird for him if he listens.
But you're right.
Anyway.
Because we talked about Do the Right Thing and how it was nominated for an Oscar that year, right?
Yeah, it was nominated for Best Picture, right? Am I wrong?
Oh, it was definitely nominated for
Best Picture?
No. Best Supporting Actor, Best Original Screenplay.
It wasn't even nominated?
No.
Excuse me?
No.
I've been
I've
fooled.
been fooled by my own.
Bamboozled.
Well, hold on. And you're going to have to correct me if I'm wrong, so fact check me on this one. Google it. But I believe at the Academy Awards that year, Kim Basinger announced an
She
award, and she publicly called out the Academy for not recognizing Do the Right
was
Thing
Best
as the
Picture.
greatest movie of the year. She announced Best Picture? God damn, good for her.
Let me double
Who's
check.
Kate Basinger?
Hold on.
Kim Basinger. You made me fucking backtrack and go, wait, is her name Kate Basinger? That's not right. It's Kim
For the
Basinger.
record, I thought that I was correct.
Kim Basinger is an actress. She was in LA Confidential. I actually don't know many other movies that she was in off the top, which is kind of shitty on my part because I feel like I would have had a better idea of her filmography a long time ago, but I haven't seen many of her movies, from what I remember anyway.
I haven't been listening. I wanted to get the record straight. She was introducing Dead Poet Society, which was nominated for Best Picture, and she literally stopped to do that.
Oh, well, fuck
To
Dead
be
Poets
like,
Society
you
over Do the
forgot.
Right Thing. I mean,
Do the
yeah,
Right Thing.
sure, emotional movie, Robin Williams, fucking Oh Captain, My Captain, good shit.
I
But
think
it's not
No.
Do the Right Thing.
I think
mean-
what we've been conflating into this is that he was very vocal at the time of being like, fuck the Academy, goddamn Driving Miss Daisy, are you kidding me? Because he knew at the time how important his film was. He was very unapologetically okay with letting people know that it's an important film. So a lot of people
I mean, how do
grew
you
their
how do you
distaste
make
for
that?
So then he gets this bad rap.
How
and
do you
that's
make
what the
that,
narrative
watch
becomes.
the cut and go, nah.
Right.
Like, there's no way. There's absolutely no way.
It only got original screenplay and best supporting actor for Danny Aiello.
I mean, I know I say this like every year for the Oscars, but fuck the Oscars. Like, they suck. They suck so bad. They only get it right like once in a decade.
I know.
And
And
even
then-
fucking when they did get it right the last time, they fucking stumbled, tripped, and fell and gave it to the whitest movie first.
La La Land. Wait. Moonlight. Sorry.
Wait,
we just
come
wanted to
on up.
see how you'd react first.
Yeah. If you'd be okay with it.
Cool. La La Land.
Jesus.
Nice.
That's so fucked up.
Barry, sit down.
And then I also think we're mixing up how Black Klansman was nominated for Best Picture almost 30 years later,
Right.
losing to Green Book, which is
How ironic.
Spike Lee observed is just the same movie, but they traded seats this time.
They traded seats.
So
this
to
time.
your 2 times of your major critical acclaim where you're on everybody's good look list and you lose to the same movie twice.
Now, real quick aside to Spike. So, Spike, I know that you don't have a mic and you can't speak, but I did say earlier that I would play your piece in which you stated how you felt about Green Book winning the Academy Award for Best Picture.
Oh,
against
yeah?
your film, Black Klansman. So, if you wouldn't mind, I will go ahead and cue up the clip of you explaining how you feel. Okay, here's the clip.
Is there something about Green Book that offends you? This is what I'm trying to get to.
Offend? Are you British?
Yeah.
Are you British?
I am.
Let me give you a British answer. It was my cup of tea. Not my cup of tea.
Spike, thank you so much for your.
Spike, I gotta say that was a good one.
That was not real permission from Spike Lee either, just for the record.
Yeah, how does the law work?
Yeah, I don't know.
He's
With
not-
podcasts, I don't know. With podcasts, that's probably a whole other thing. Podcast law, we don't understand yet.
It's like the high seas.
It's like the
a
Wild
whole
West.
new world.
I gotta
baby.
say, I think anybody looking to copyright strike us usually leaves within the first 15 minutes. They're like, you know what? It's not worth it. Whatever song they started playing, they can have it. I don't care.
I feel like people that
It's
have a
true.
problem with copyright claiming also have a problem with heat. So they probably
They would be
stop
like, oh well, sorry about the copyright
Guess
strikes.
I
I
gotta
hate
go."
heat. I gotta get out of here.
Them's
God,
the rules.
This podcast with these rules.
How do we get
I guess I'll
here?
just head to the Dead Poet Society.
Boo.
Boo indeed. So anyway, speaking of Westerns earlier, Frank, you made the point to say that this Do the Right Thing kind of feels like a Western. I feel like that might be a nice jumping off point.
I mean, not entirely.
More or
I
less
think,
the vibe of like almost like the idea of a Western town.
I think
isolated
yeah,
from
for
other
sure.
towns in the world around them. You
Yeah,
know?
and then you got the saloon is Sal's Pizzeria where people are coming in and
The
out doing their
congregation. Yeah.
business, and you have all these random asides and adventures and
Radio
moments
Raheem
between
is almost like the
people.
man with no name or something.
Right.
This mythic figure.
The moment that connection clicked was at the end, where right before, after Sal smashes Radio's radio, there's a silence in the room, and everybody's staring at each other, and it's like, you had noticed earlier in the movie, Jesse, that he's pretty sparing with the close-ups. Like, it's a large movie with a lot of moving parts and people, so it's always shot wide, and it's
And
trying
he
to
consumes the frame with things going on.
right. So he's pretty sparing with his close-ups, so they're always more affecting when they happen. And in that, after he smashes the radio, you get like every single person in the restaurant close up and reaction to the situation. I'm like, it's like a showdown. You're waiting for the guns to get drawn. Everybody's just silent. Like,
Yeah.
what's gonna happen? Something's about to happen. And
Yeah.
it's that
It's a powder keg waiting to blow.
unbearable tension. And I was like, it feels like a Western. Like, who's gonna shoot first?
And I think the thing that
Ah.
struck me this time watching was that powder keg always seemed to start to ignite toward the latter half of the movie, even more or less the latter quarter of the movie. But I think that there are scenes throughout that accent that idea that the fuse has been lit for a long time, and it's not just one powder keg, it's multiple, and they're going to keep going off for years and years and years. I mean, obviously we're here talking about the movie today in the same way that people were talking about it in 1989 to a certain extent. So
I
that
mean,
says something right there.
I do think that's why it starts the way it does, with like the basic music video of Rosie Perez dancing
Insanely
to the music
powerful.
to fight the power, which is the film's like mantra.
The anthem.
It's I think before setting you out on this journey, it's like the reminding you what it's about and how to relate to it in real life or something. Like, that song captures a lot of energy, and you pointed it out, that like captures the emotion and energy of the song and physicality.
Well, I almost wondered if it sort of served like a dance piece to represent what the narrative of the movie is. Like, I wonder if Spike Lee had, and I should have read Spike Lee's director's notes in the Criterion edition that I have all the way through. They're quite extensive, but I will plan to read those very soon, especially after that rewatch.
I started reading them, and they are very insightful, the stuff that I did read thus far.
I'm curious to talk about that in a little bit.
Mhm.
But I'm wondering if Spike Lee maybe had said something to like along the lines of explain the movie through this dance, like, because it feels like it's communicating this aggressive and prescient energy that is very palpable throughout the entire movie.
I remember when I first saw it when we were in a theater in New York, thinking that the dance was just like beat by beat just to the song. And so like it made me focus on the song a little bit more. And I think, I sort of like was able to fall into the mantra throughout the first like viewing of the film. And then I want to say that this time I was focused a lot more on Rosie Perez's moves specifically like how she was moving to the music, and it seemed so much more like, I don't know, like personalized. If it did, like, to me feel like the story of Do the Right Thing. It's happy, it's fun at times, but then there are times when she's like almost like crumping, or it's like it's tumultuous, it's filled with anger, it's filled with rage, it's all of these things in one, and that's also what the song
It feels
song
very
is.
cathartic.
it does.
Mhm.
And I
Like
think
right
that
out
that's
the
a
gate.
thing.
It starts with that kind of emotion.
I think that this movie could have also ended with this dance and it would have had the same effect.
Though I don't think you can beat the ending. of
Yeah.
this.
No.
You wanna end on the emotional power at the end, but remind you of the opposite end of this spectrum that exists at the beginning.
But to quickly point out a bit of information about Spike Lee's meeting of Rosie Perez, just because
Oh,
I
yeah.
found this so funny.
I don't know this.
That apparently, and I'm reading this from IMDb. So according to Spike Lee, the casting of Rosie Perez came about during a birthday party he was hosting in a club in L.A. When the R&B song "Debut" by Experience Unlimited from his previous movie School Days started playing, a spontaneous butt contest was held. Lee saw Perez dancing on top of a speaker and told her to come down, fearing that she would fall off and hurt herself and he would get sued. Security had to step in and force Perez down, after which she profusely cursed at Lee. Lee was in awe of her voice and quickly learned that they were both from the same part of Brooklyn. He offered her the part of Mookie's girlfriend on the spot, deciding that she would be Puerto Rican.
He's such a little. I love it.
It's so fun. How old was he when he made this again? In the early
31,
30s?
I think.
31. Unreal.
Yeah, that's so fucking funny, dude. Like what?
Because he didn't want to get sued. That's so like him.
Didn't want her to get hurt.
I noticed this time she's literally thrusting on the final credit, which is
Into his name.
name?
we
into
said,
his
yeah.
name. I was like, all right, like calm down.
And then the indulgent sex scene that comes later. Though
Not
even
sex.
Yeah.
well, I know.
Intimate.
Yeah,
Erotic.
it feels more felt than,
It's
pornographic.
good, yeah, it's good stuff. It's sweet. What?
yeah.
Sweet.
So anyway, but the movie opens in such like a joyous way, and it's a very light movie for a lot of it. People classify it as a comedy overall, which is kind of shocking. Like,
I
when
feel
you consider
like
the weight of it,
simply because of the end, you can't call it a comedy.
Yeah.
but absolutely not.
You
It's
can't call it. If
it's a
any,
slice of
I
life.
guess
It's a slice of
si-
life drama.
I was about to say satire, but that's the same thing. I don't
Well,
know.
not to point out a real white movie, but Manchester by the Sea is a movie that I always gave a lot of credit for being a very good representation of how life is both extremely tragic and depressing,
okay.
but pretty funny sometimes,
And mundane.
mundane, and a whole number of other emotions and things. Like a day, so much can happen. Like it
Yeah.
doesn't matter.
Exactly.
And all it takes is one thing to set it off and turn it into something completely different.
I think that's the most
That's
rewarding aspect of the rewatches, though, is like you still feel that it is like this one thing exploding, but the more you watch it, the more you can see how it's slowly building up throughout the day in little ways, and then you think about the context of what's the reality of their situation, which is the reality of our situation, and how these things just build up over time. And then you get to the point like we are right now, or at the end of this movie. It's always there. And it's like, yeah, one thing sets it off, but it had to be there already. Like, it's in his notes. I was like, where did I read that? Literally, Spike Lee said it. Can I read this excerpt? He says, now Sal can't be a saint. His two sons didn't just pick this shit up out of thin air. They get it from home, from their parents, from their friends. This is the tricky thing. Like many people who have racist views, these views are so ingrained they aren't aware of them. We should see that in Sal. Basically, he's a good person, but he feels black people are inferior. Even if Sal's not a saint, in the end, when he sits down with Mookie on the curb, there has to be a sliver of realization on his part. He has to recognize Mookie's humanity. And I don't remember my point in reading this.
I feel like it is the point, like that quote.
Yeah. The racist views. It's like it's ingrained in them. It's something that's always there. Like, it doesn't just, like, Sal is a pretty good guy throughout most of the movie. Like, he's being nice.
Yes.
He's
For all
doing
intents and
gestures.
purposes, yes.
At the very
Sure.
least, he's earnest.
Right.
Like I was saying that just before the final scene, which I hate to jump all the way to the end. again.
Whatever.
It
We're not
doesn't
talking
matter.
about plot
We're not
today.
talking
Yeah.
about the
But
plot of the movie.
I think that really got to me this time when it's like they were already closed. They didn't have to open back up, but god damn it, he had to because they love his pizza.
Yeah.
Like everyone loves his pizza, and he
all he
has to
cares
give his
about.
customers what they want because that's what he cares about. Exactly, his
But-
store, his business,
And
his family.
literally, though, 2-3 minutes later, it unearths what's always been brewing.
And
Like,
yeah,
those
but
things
what is it
don't-
on the foundation of? You know,
Yeah.
at what cost? And why does he have to be so arrogant throughout the entire thing? Why can't he listen to the people, his customers, the people that are supplying him with his money, his business?
Even if he's not being like horrid the whole time.
Yeah,
It
it's
works
about
both ways.
recognition.
It works. It's about recognition, and it's about how this movie forces you to see from every single side of the story.
I was gonna say it's very interesting that he doesn't portray Radio Raheem as like innocent in the situation.
Not at
No.
all.
And
No.
that's what like makes me feel so tight in the chest and confused and like why it is such a complicated movie.
I had that
Because like
thought.
nobody is like free from judgment
And
in
that
any
is-
sense.
That is
That's
what
human.
what upset me the
Yeah.
most when we first saw this movie, and I know it shocked everybody that I was with. It shocked Jesse, it shocked Frank, shocked Nick. When we left this theater, I was in like a rage, not just because of the movie, but because of how much like the people who I like am the closest to, how much they had talked it up to me and how much they loved it, and I was like, if I'm interpreting this movie right, then that means that the people that I'm associating with see the world in such a different way. And it was like a deeply concerning thing for me.
I
And
apologize
it
for that.
made me no, because you guys weren't wrong. It's like I was stuck on one side of the movie and I needed to be on both. And it took so like I mean, I was convinced by the end of the night after having like literally some of the best conversations with you guys, but it did take like over the course of like months and months and months for my love for the movie to grow
Mhm.
into what it is now. Like before we even watched it the second time, like I was already convinced like, oh, this is probably one of the most important films that I'll ever see in my life. And I, in hindsight, am so appreciative of the way that I was able to see it. But the way that it doesn't have you pick a side is something that frustrated me because I love simplicity. I like I think it's easy when at the end of the movie you're like, all right, yeah, that was the bad guy, this is the good guy, and you're good. But at the end at the end of the movie, I feel like I'm right there sitting on the curb with Sal, where it's like, all right, now what do I got? And what do I do with this? But somehow at the end of this viewing, I felt a little bit more like Mookie, where it was like, all right, now it's on to the next. Like we got to keep it moving. And I don't know. I think that is so powerful that you can do that. That you can make that like the opposites come out in a person, and then that you have the power to make them also reconcile with that, while also just making it a movie about a day, just a day in the life in one specific neighborhood. And at the end of the day, that's all it was.
Yeah.
The way that it just sort of continues at the end, where it's like, all right, on to the next.
Yeah.
This is just another day.
We discussed like the possible duality of the idea of the mayor coming, because Senior Love Daddy says like the mayor's going to pay a visit to our street to see what started the commotion last night, and we noticed something that I don't retain for some reason because it's not as hopeful.
Well, I
They
remember
highlight-
last viewing in New York, we all talked about how that was a big high point of hope for the movie.
Right.
But I
But-
do agree that with the hindsight of this most recent event, that it changed our lens a bit on certain elements of the movie, for sure.
It's because he highlights that he wants to get that no property shall be destroyed. He doesn't mention Radio Raheem's death in his statement.
Right.
He mentions Sal's pizzeria being burnt down. So that's why it's like the neighborhood goes on with its business, because it's implying nothing's just going to change, but it like there's still that hope that it could. Like maybe the mayor comes and listens to somebody for once, you know?
Right. And I mean, hey,
Because we are seeing that right now.
I think that it's interesting that you brought up the point earlier about how Radio Raheem isn't necessarily like totally innocent within the situation.
Absolutely
But
not.
I think the whole point, especially like with all this going on, I realized this time, and I mean, maybe I'm wrong, maybe it's controversial, but I think the whole idea is the fact that the police are supposed to come in and arrest Radio Raheem, and that's it. If he's trying to, quote, attempt to murder a person, if that's what they're trying to charge him with, right? Regardless, they just kill him. They take the whole reason of him, he killed, or he was attempting to kill this guy, so we can go ahead and take his life.
But that's
and no
not
one's gonna
even
give
what
a
that
shit.
feels like in that moment.
It doesn't feel it.
You know, like, yeah, that's the justification. That's
Mhm.
that's like that's the looking at it. And
Well, no, but it's about the
that's-
grander scope of racism.
Right.
They're just taking it as an opportunity to take a way to do what they want and not get in trouble.
'cause they're simmering all
Play
day.
the system. Yeah.
He says, if I have to come back here, I'm gonna start busting skulls.
Yeah. I mean, it's like you said, it's a lit fuse that's about to go off at any moment, but you can't know when it will. It's just like it does every so often, and then the cycle repeats itself, and it keeps cycling back and forth over and over and over again.
The fact that Radio Raheem can be found at fault at some point in all of this, I think only goes to reiterate that that is not worth somebody's life.
No, and I don't even
Yeah,
necessarily
exactly.
think that Radio Raheem was trying to kill Sal. I think he was just fucking furious over the fact that Sal
Listen.
actually is the one who laid the first blow
On
of
the
hate
radio.
on Radio Raheem. Radio
Yeah.
Raheem's the one who gives the love and hate speech at the fucking middle of the movie or whenever that is.
Just about middle.
Yeah. It is with hate that Cain laid his brother low. Well, that's the Night of the Hunter quote.
Iced his brother.
Iced his brother. Yes.
And love is good.
Yes.
I don't remember what he says.
Yeah, I'd have to remember the monologue verbatim, but I don't.
So I'm Frank.
I'm Jesse.
Brandon.
Saw this movie like 10 years ago, and even though it like immediately had a strong impact, whatever, I used to have like the conflicted feelings about burning down the pizzeria for a long time. The first like 4 years of loving the movie, like it did. I was like, it's so like, why? Like, it's the cops killed him. I don't get it. And then eventually, luckily, well before all this is going on, but just like it finally clicked at some point. So like, what else can you do? How else can we be heard and communicated? What is the quote? What is the MLK quote?
Right.
Right.
This is
Martin
the
Luther-
language of the unheard.
Yes. That's everything. That's everything right there. Because even in the movie, Spike's calling out reality. They name check people who, even at the time, had gone through experiences like this. The big one is the Eleanor bumpers, and then they all start chanting Howard Beach
Howard Beach.
at the
Who
end.
was the person who was involved in the
It was
No.
the neighborhood.
Yeah,
Oh, yes.
it was a neighborhood where 4 black men were attacked
That's
in
right.
an Italian neighborhood after leaving a pizzeria. And they encountered with the guys earlier in the day, and then there was a literal mob that attacked them. One of them running away got hit by a car and was killed. And it happened in Howard Beach in a situation that realistically mirrors what happened at the end. In the director's notes early on, he wrote, I didn't know the event at the time, but he wrote like maybe it should end with somebody running and getting hit by a car. He's like, it's ingrained in the movie is reality, which is why I think it is extra powerful because it almost plays against reality.
Well, it's
It is so
interesting.
heightened. It is so like almost magical feeling in a lot of it.
I think that going back to the opening again, I think Spike opening the movie on a stage, like clearly, it almost looks like a theatrical stage with the black mat
Yeah.
on the floor and everything, and the backdrop curtain instead of, because I don't think those are sets. I think that that's a curtain with paintings or a matte painting or something
I'm not sure.
of the Bed-Stuy Brooklyn homes. But that right there sets up the idea of the facade of the movie, of the theatrical element of it. And I
Yeah.
think that this is ironically one of the films that it's a purely cinematic movie, especially from the way that Spike applies his own style to it. But I think he takes a lot of theatrical stage tricks and applies them to the film. Like we said, I think the use of wide lens is not just in congruence with that theatrical element, but also the classic Hollywood studio style of shooting and the way that these characters interact with each other. I think going back to the Western comparison, you can lump that into with there is this sort of classic vibe to this movie that is rooted in American filmmaking it's a purely American movie. There's no
Mhm.
question about that. And so obviously it is rooted in those movies, and Spike has cited a lot of them as big influences on himself.
Mhm.
So it only makes sense that he shows us this world through his lens. Like, I feel like this probably is the way that Spike Lee sees the world in some way, but it's communicated in a hyper real, or not hyper real, but
Stylized.
hyper stylized reality.
Mhm.
But not like over stylized. It's not like Quentin Tarantino or
Right,
fucking
right,
like
right.
something like that. It's definitely distinct to Spike, especially in his use of like Dutch angles and things. Like, I find that those are very specific to him. And he always goes back to that. I think it really only happens in when Mookie throws the trash can, but his showing the same shot from different perspectives.
When he kisses Rosie Perez.
That's right. Okay, so
Those are
there's
the
a
two
couple.
times.
Right, but he does that throughout his career, and a few other things too. There's obviously stylistic flares, but it's crazy that it's his third movie, and he's already this assured as a filmmaker, and probably making it's my favorite movie of his, but I think it's almost objectively his most important work throughout his career.
One of them.
Yeah.
But I don't know, man. I think I have a total of 4 Spike Lee movies under my belt now. Because
Yeah, I'm ashamedly low. I think I'm around the same.
during
I think I'm at 10.
during Black History Month, I watched She's Gotta Have It, his first one. And we as a group watched Bamboozled together,
Mhm.
and that's 3 right there, right?
Right.
Yeah.
Trying to think of
Black Klansman.
Oh, and Black
Oh yeah, there's
Klansman.
Bamboozled too.
And I gotta say that it seems like with every movie he makes, he is trying to he's convey whatever message that he's trying to convey. It seems to do it like very earnestly from the soul, and that means that some like even the things that are messed up are coming from him. And I think the thing that I like the most is how much at least it seems to me, he owns up to how much his movies are a reflection of him in terms of like the shame
Not
that he
Old
feels. Not Old Boy.
Oh.
Oh, is that the remake
His
that he
remake,
did?
yeah, it's quite bad.
I forgot that he did an Old Boy remake with Ron
I don't
Perlman.
even think he really would. No, it was
No.
Josh Brolin.
Josh
Actually.
Brolin.
And Sharlto Copley,
Excuse me?
District 9 fame.
Okay.
Sam Jackson.
Wait, that's the
Sam
movie
Jackson's
about
in it too. That's right. He has a tiny part.
Jews, isn't it? Isn't it
District
like
9?
an allegory
I mean,
for
I
like
guess
the
No, no.
Holocaust?
Are you talking about Inside Man?
no,
District 9.
I think
Oh,
I think
no,
it's
no,
more
that's
the apartheid.
apartheid.
Yeah. I mean, it's, you could say similar things
Yeah.
or whatever, but
Why?
It's
what?
just the fact that you could say no. District 9's about apartheid. Sorry, it's the
it-
one
yeah.
about the aliens.
No, it is.
It's
Look it
a-
up.
yeah.
It's a South African movie. He's very been like, this is about apartheid.
Yeah. There
Like,
was a
we're-
short
we're-
film and everything beforehand.
Yeah, we're not. That's. It
Okay,
is.
that is
That's what the
okay,
director
all
was
right,
saying.
all right.
There's no
I thought that
ambiguity
this
there.
was just an ongoing fan
No,
theory where
no.
it's like it's definitely about apartheid. You know,
No,
like the
no.
way that we interpret books 100 years later.
Yes.
All right, good.
Yeah.
I
We
mean,
know
if
what
we're-
this
if we're-
was about.
hey,
The
maybe-
Bush? Come on.
Hey, if movies are subjective, it's not necessarily objectively about the apartheid. But if we're saying the director has the objective view, then it's about the apartheid.
Yeah, fuck.
It's really fucked up.
It's hard
Alright.
to say.
How do we get to District 9?
Who knows?
We got to District 9
because Old Boy.
through Old Boy.
Spike Lee's
I was saying
good.
that the way that he is honest with himself. I'm talking, I guess specifically, he admits that he has a rape scene and She's Gotta Have It that to this day he is ashamed of.
I didn't even know
That he
Yeah.
hates that he put it in this movie. He thinks it was wildly unnecessary, and it's something that he bashes himself for to this
and
day.
it's definitely the worst part of the movie.
It is.
Yeah.
I watched it with another friend of the podcast, Michael, and
Nice.
both of us during this part of the movie were just like, "Whoa! Like this is completely out of nowhere and
And
very
then it's
off
kind of
base."
just like almost laughed off. In
Yeah.
The movie.
She just mentions it one other time, and he's like, "Yeah, I feel bad," but either way,
Crazy.
when I think about the 4 movies that I've seen, 2 of them, and all 3 of them covering race relations, and then one of them, the earlier one, being more so about gender relations. He's always been trying to, like, I don't know, say the same thing, but I think he's trying to become more focused on, or less focused on, like, audience perceptions. Where, I don't know, Black Klansman to me felt more personal than Do the Right Thing in terms of, like, Black Klansman is something he made for him, where Do the Right Thing he made because he was like, people need to see this to understand. Whereas Black Klansman is both, maybe. And this is all interpretation, but to me, I don't know.
Yeah, I was gonna say, if anything, both I feel like are both. Like, I think there are times where he says "damn an audience," and there are times where he doesn't.
I mean,
And I
Spike
feel
Lee is
like-
obviously a very conflicted artist.
Yeah, and I think "Do the Right Thing" and "Black Klansman" both feel like they're made to be high profile. I said at the end of "Do the Right Thing," like, it never dawned on me how crazy it is that it ends with the two quotes. Like, I literally think that is very powerful, like the most powerful ending to a movie probably ever, like, because you're sitting with these two ideologies that do coexist, of like the two forefront people that led to a movement that could let a movie like Do the Right Thing even exist, and it's trying to talk about these ideas, and it feels so brazen. Like, that'd be like, I don't know, it's hard to imagine, like, this is your third movie and you're like, I'm gonna say my movie is important enough to include these, and it feels completely earned.
Well, yeah, it's bold, but it's earned.
And that comes from, I think, the honesty and the earnestness and knowing that people were going to be affected by what he was doing. Like, I think you'd have to be conscious of like how an audience is going to receive that. Like I said to you guys at the moment too, I said, imagine if Crash ended with those quotes. It would be the most ludicrous thing you'd ever see.
Absolutely.
Even though those words are powerful in and of themselves, like tacked on there, it would lose all its weight. But there it makes them louder than they've like ever been. After you witness these like 2 hours of information, and then you have to wrestle with these very real things that have been trying to be communicated now for over 50 years.
Well,
60 years?
to sort of
What year is it?
I mean, 400,
Like,
but 60.
I'm talking for those guys specifically.
Yes. Then I'd
But
say,
yeah, 400 years of trying to raise up the power and
trying to be recognized as a person.
be recognized as a person, have a stake in the country you literally built. Absurd.
it's fucked.
Wild that we have to talk about it, but at least we have a modem to do so.
To
Yeah.
blend this to the world of the Chronic canon a little further, Spike Lee credits the then president of Universal Pictures, Thomas Philip Pollock, for standing by the movie, even after it caused considerable controversy during its premiere at the Cannes Film Festival. The movie was planned for a summer 1989 USA release, but Pollock was under heavy pressure to release it in the fall out of the fear of inciting riots. This was all the more pressing since Pollock was still under bodyguard protection after releasing The Last Temptation of Christ,
Yeah.
as he and his family had been getting death threats.
I was about to bring that up.
Or even Lee told Pollock that he would understand if he had to release the movie at a later time, but Pollock stood by his decision and released the movie on the intended release date.
Good on Pollock.
Oh, yeah.
Allies are important.
Yeah.
Well, that's something that I was going to say about Spike's, boldness in putting those quotes at the end of the movie, or having the assuredness in his methodology and his message. He had so many people supporting him. Everybody involved in this movie clearly loved him and loved his message and supported it. And I don't even necessarily think that, I can't say for sure, but it's not even like a message that he can claim like as his, being that it's like it is the message.
Yeah.
Like it just is the word.
Do the right thing.
Yeah.
Do the right thing.
That's it.
Yeah.
That's it. I got it. I'm gone. Does he do the right thing?
I mean, but I think that that's the real genius of Spike Lee, is that he does leave it up to the audience to have the
And
choice.
That was the struggle. And I remember when I was like, it's called Do the Right Thing, and I don't even know who is correct. Like, why did Mook, I don't think that the pizza shop would have been destroyed if Mookie hadn't incited the violence. And then I just remember Frank looking at me, and he went, if they didn't destroy the pizza shop, they were probably just going to kill Sal. And he was like,
he incited them to do so.
And they were like, he said if they weren't going to kill Sal, then it would have been one of his sons, and then it would have been all of them. It just would have been bad. So Mookie was trying to divert that, at least.
What's worse?
And then it still remained the question, is like, was that the right thing? We don't know.
I think so. I think there is an answer. Otherwise, I don't think he'd make it and call it Do the Right Thing. I don't think he'd pull so hard on that. I think Lee thinks there's the answer and that he did.
Well, I don't think that even Mookie is doubtful in his decision.
Yeah.
I almost thought
He
that
walks
scene
away from
earlier in
Sal.
that movie when he talks to DeMayer and he says, always do the right thing. And he just says, okay, I got it. I'm gone. It's like
Right.
he already knows.
He knows. When the time comes, he'll do it.
Yep.
And
I was going to say that look on his face when he has his hands over his face really gave me chills this time.
we talked.
You could see the look in his eyes shift. It was a perfect moment in his performance.
We discussed during the film how he's like not really great at acting. Like it adds a charm to Mookie for sure, and
just
he's
think
not
he's
bad
perfect for the movie though. I can't see anyone else.
Exactly, but like it's his stares are all money.
Perfect.
Every single
Yeah.
one in the movie, he has that million-mile stare that is like earth-shatteringly good, and
Yeah.
I'm like, I get it now. And then it's like sometimes his like deliveries are clunky, or he seems a little stiff.
Yeah.
Probably because he's thinking about the million of things going on.
He was even writing Mo Better Blues on the set.
He was just in the flow.
He was
man.
moving. Like
Dude.
I made a comparison
was
between
in the
him and Orson
flow.
Welles earlier on how he was so opposed to the Hollywood system and the Hollywood system was so opposed to him, and yet he made, his truest masterpieces at the earliest moments of his career, like based off the critical standard or whatever.
Malcolm X might have been the thing that finally like started to dry the flow.
There are
'Cause I
still,
feel
I've
like-
only seen that movie once, and it was over a decade ago, but there are so many moments that are still ingrained in my head. They were so powerful.
A great flick.
His use of A Change Is Gonna Come by Sam Cooke in the end is one of the greatest uses of music in any movie ever.
He's got a lot of them.
I
Oh,
really
yeah.
want to see it.
This soundtrack
powerful.
and the score by Bill Lee is incredible for Do the Right Thing.
His
The
dad.
soundtrack's in a lot of fucking Spike Lee's movies.
Wait,
are
what
all
did you
incredible.
just say?
His
It's-
dad.
It's his dad.
His dad did the score for this
And
movie.
his sister played his sister. He involved everybody he loved.
He called it in. He said, "Let's do it, boys.
Yeah,
They're
and
giving us a shot."
I want to take it back to the real Bed-Stuy neighborhood last year in June when we were there real quick, because I was saying to Brandon earlier how I remembered at the time thinking it was so beautiful that you could just see, like, because obviously, like, I've still never met Spike Lee personally. Sorry, Spike. I know that you're here, but
Yeah,
Well,
this doesn't count.
Yeah,
This isn't formal.
we want to
but-
talk to you, Spike.
but I remember, like, obviously, like, there are so many different opinions that people will throw at you about Spike Lee anytime his name is brought up, because obviously he's a very prolific figure, like, in pop culture. And some people view him very negatively from my experience, and other people see him in the way that we see him. very positively.
Before I was antiquated with him, I had the general idea that Hollywood did not like Spike Lee, and Spike Lee did not care for Hollywood.
I mean,
And
that is
I am
basically the
I am
truth.
correct. I
Yeah.
am very correct.
So,
But it made me have like a sort of off-put feeling about Spike Lee before ever really experiencing his filmography.
Yeah.
And I think it's shameful. I think it's putting a lot more people off other than myself.
yeah.
Because these are
It's 'cause
movies that need
he's-
to be seen.
because he's challenging. He is not
Yes.
afraid to challenge you.
Right.
I wouldn't call him a provocateur because I think people who get that label are like literally trying to incite a reaction, where I think he's just trying to challenge the things that we accept in daily life.
Yeah.
Yes.
Like all his movies at some point like break that wall where it's just
Yeah.
like, hey, don't forget this is fucking real.
Like this
dummies.
is life.
Sorry, I didn't mean to cut off the train.
No, well, anyway, I thought it was profoundly beautiful almost that it seemed that when we actually saw him in person and I could get a read on his body language and his personality, like in the flesh, like I wasn't talking to him, I wasn't communicating with him even by looking directly into his eyes or anything. Like we didn't make eye contact. I never stood that close to him.
Darn. I
But-
wish.
For real. It was just so cool.
It
and
kind of
I'm-
sounds like
I
you're
remember-
covering it up like you did.
I remember rounding the corner.
I did not
Dude,
look at Spike
why
Lee.
Would why would I
didn't-
not admit that?
I did not smell his scent. He didn't hug me either. I don't still have the shirt. I've never laid eyes on the man. We've never been alone together.
I love the
promise.
government.
I mean, he's here. Why are we trying to pretend like he's not? Anyway, I remember rounding the stage and seeing him like right there. It was almost a shock. Like, whoa, there he is.
yeah.
And he was wearing the Sal's Pizzeria shirt and like his outfit from the movie. And you could just read the happiness in his entire demeanor. Like, and everybody in that crowd, like it was a packed
There was
crowd.
way too many people
Wall
there.
to wall. But
And it was already hot.
It was impossible to navigate through.
It
Do you
was.
remember trying to get
Yes.
anywhere?
Yes, but
we
I remember
thought that
because
if we went on the outskirts that it would help, but
Yeah.
every
It
like
actually
it
got
just,
worse.
It just kept becoming outskirts. It's like,
I
oh,
know.
we're 3 blocks away now. We have
But
to get back.
Seeing Spike so happy made me so happy. And I
Yeah.
think that
Mhm.
energy really communicated. And it was obvious that it was flowing through all the people that he'd bring up on stage with him, because he'd bring up cast members and people that were involved in the movie. Like we said, Chuck D came up and,
Rosie Perez was there.
yep.
I think we were like walking away by the time that she was like coming on. The
Yeah, no,
stage.
She came up
we
'cause
heard
she-
some of her
We
speech.
heard her.
She-
Giancarlo Esposito came up and talked.
Because
Did
she could only
Yeah.
be there. She could stop by in between things.
That's right.
Was the thing.
Yes.
She was
and
like, yeah, she's got a plan. It's landing down here. She's gonna come here, talk to us for a little bit, and then she's got to catch another flight. So make sure you appreciate it, people. It's like the way Spike was speaking to us. It was literally like we were at a cookout.
Yep.
Yeah.
And he was like, "Come on, everybody, we're bringing out Chuck D. Make
Yep.
sure you make some noise for the boy."
Roger Governor
It
Smith
felt so
came out.
good.
Yeah,
Smiley.
Smiley was there.
Smiley was there.
A good point to point out that Smiley was a character that apparently was not written into the original script, as Governor Smith came to Spike Lee and asked him to be in the film, and Spike Lee just on the fly was like, "Sure, you can be this character that we will now throw into
And
the
he's
movie."
pretty like integral.
We were making that point during this watch specifically, in that, like we talked about earlier, how Spike uses these wide angle shots to kind of present this sort of mosaic of things going on. To kind of round back to that theatrical thing too, that's kind of the point that I was making, was that it feels intimate in a way that a lot of cinema doesn't, and only theater does. And I think that that's a weird bridge that Spike manages to breed in this. And I think that he, uses like those Bertolt Brechtian tactics with the talking directly to camera and things like that.
Yeah.
So obviously there are more theatrical elements literally ingrained in it, but I think there is just in the general vibe of the movie as well, and the general mise en scène of the movie is very theatrical. But
It definitely got a Tennessee Williams vibe for a lot of it.
oh, no doubt,
A little bit of Glass Menagerie.
classical
Mhm.
playwright vibe.
Yeah, Streetcar.
It's
Just
a-
the
it is
the
a
way that the
Damn good script.
Yeah.
Like the script of all scripts, probably.
And that is original. That's original.
Yeah,
Like,
it's
he
all
came up
Spike.
with that himself.
Yeah.
Uh,
Well, was there a co-writer?
I think there might
Yeah.
have been.
Oh,
no,
no.
no. This
It was
one's all just him.
Spike.
I
Hell,
thought his
yeah.
sister helped him write
No,
it.
no, that's Crooklyn.
Oh, okay.
Who is also in this movie, if we hadn't already mentioned that.
We did.
We did.
We did. It's Jody Lee. He got all the people, man. He said, "Come on, we're making a movie."
Oh, but that was something that the whole point of the community thing was that, he just integrates these people that are part of his life, and he finds a way to just organically put them in something that, imagine Do the Right Thing without Smiley.
Yeah.
Like,
You
you
can't.
can't. Like, when we were talking about the wide angle lenses, Smiley is in the back of like so many shots, just standing there observing. And I kind of almost felt like, because of the fact that he's this person who has this disability in which that obviously affects his speech,
Mm-hmm.
that he's preaching the words of two men who could speak better than practically anybody, and he's always around with their pictures
And
like,
listening to them.
yeah, and listening to them, always preaching their words the best he can, and then ends up hanging the picture on the wall at the end. That hard cut
hurt.
is one of the greatest cuts like all time.
I'm very proud of myself for holding in my tears, because all day today I was like, oh God, this movie's gonna end and I'm just gonna be in shambles, and then I'm gonna have to sob and say, I'm sorry, we're gonna have to record later in the week. I just don't think I can do it right now. But I got like the point where I thought I was gonna cry. I was doing very well, and I was like, all right, like I'm cool, I got this. And then a point that didn't affect me the last time, but watching him hang that picture on the wall, and then it goes to the shot of him smiling with the raging fire behind him about to eat up the whole shot. It brought tears to my eyes. It felt so like fucking powerful. I was just like, man, this one image is saying so many things. I don't even have the words to convey them, because there are none. That's why this image exists. Thank you, Spike. It's so good.
I think it's like almost more nuanced than real life. Like, I just started to think about it. It was like everybody has like so many dimensions to them. And I feel like we're seeing more and more actually in reality that dimensions are kind of dropping in a way. Like, people are really showing their true colors right now.
Like who they are.
Yeah. And it's weird to see, like, because there can't be conversation. It feels like this movie is having the conversation because people often can't, you know?
Yeah,
Like
especially
this-
at that time too. Like, think about the
Yeah.
fact that there's no internet when Do the Right Thing comes out.
There's no internet, but they were still able to name drop all these tragedies.
By like almost giving everybody the time of day, the time in the day.
Yeah.
And that's probably like it. Dude, how do you do? He should have quit movies. This feels like another one of those. Like, I feel like those are all my favorite movies. When I sit there and go and be like, nobody looked around and went, okay, so we're done. We get it now. We don't need it anymore, right? No, it's a never-ending cycle of learning for some reason.
Well, he's using film as revolution.
But it's just like it feels like you feel like you have more to say. Jesus, this is more than like most people will ever get down in a lifetime, and you did it in 2 hours. Like,
Remarkable.
it's kind of scary. Like, when I'm really thinking about it, I'm like, how'd you do that? Like, just pure inspiration.
At 31 years old.
Just running and gunning.
He wrote the script in 2 weeks.
It's insane.
I don't know, man. I think it's like it becomes a reflection of life. It's because it's what you're living and what you're experiencing, and I don't know, to feel the need that your story is important enough for the world to know, and to feel that you are the person that needs to tell this story
You're
because
getting
people
the
aren't
chance
listening. And I think that a reason to continue is frustration. It's like, why did Kendrick Lamar make any album after Good Kid, Mad City even? Why did he make another one after To Pimp a Butterfly? Why is he going to make another one after Damn? Because people aren't listening the way that the artist feels the way that they need to. If people saw Do the Right Thing and realized that there was a problem with systemic racism in our country and that we rely too much on the police to do the things that we should start being able to somehow do ourselves. We've made like
or involve other people.
Yes, we've made the police this monolith of power. And I feel like if people saw this movie and actually like sat down and took a look at themselves and the state of the world and started to bring about change, Spike Lee maybe wouldn't have had to make anything else besides some things that were fun to him. His Jungle Fevers, whatever the fuck.
Yeah.
But
Haven't seen
it's
Jungle
that
Fever,
people,
can't
I'm
tell you.
assuming that's just going to be a fun movie for
Yeah.
Spike Lee. I don't think it's saying anything.
The cop
This-
characters reprised
maybe-
their roles in it from Do the Right Thing.
Wow.
Jungle
Crazy
Fever?
that I
Jungle
just
Fever.
dropped that one out of nowhere. I just know that that's another
I don't think
controversial
Spike Lee
movie.
doesn't know how to like take a back seat. I think he's always saying something.
Yeah. I didn't
Well,
mean he
no,
said
old
say
boy.
anything.
Well, right. Fuck.
There's one outlier.
Fucking old boy. Maybe he is. And we were all
Who
too
knows?
dumb to see
He
it.
seems pretty fucking
Run it
like,
back.
I don't give a shit.
Yeah, I just
in
wanted
every
money.
interview. I don't know about the money thing necessarily even. I think that it was just a for hire job. Like maybe it was I need
So
to
for
make
money.
this movie so I will make
Oh.
this.
Yeah.
A Scorsese thing. Which to point out, just because we talk about Scorsese, that Spike Lee and Scorsese are really good friends.
Really good fucking
And there's
friend.
a really good interview between the two of them
Wait.
on YouTube that's like an
Irishman?
hour long. That's not for. I mean, maybe there was an
No,
Irishman
we
too.
listened to that. The DGA podcast.
Oh,
Spike Lee
yeah.
interviewed Scorsese for The Irishman.
Well, there's
I
also
didn't know
one from
that.
like the early '90s or like maybe like late '80s.
I also didn't know that they were best friends. All you guys told me was that he took a lot of that he took.
I know, Spike, are you guys best friends? He's shaking his head no. You like him though, right? He's shaking his head yes.
Oh. like her a lot.
All I knew is that he was an inspiration for him.
No, they're buds. They're like real good buds.
They
They're
support
both
each
like,
other's movies
hey,
like
you make
hardcore.
New York movies, cool, dude. In The Thing, oh my god, in the director's notes early on, he's like, I want to show all these different cultures that live on this block. He literally lists out all the ones we see, like Italian, Puerto Rican, Asian, or Chinese. Jesus Christ,
I mean,
Jamaican, Italian American, African American, whatever. And he says, show New York like it is, not like that Woody shit.
Ha!
And I'm like,
does Woody Allen make bullshit movies?
it's
about
just
New
rich
York?
white people.
Yes,
That's
my
it. Those
God.
are his only characters. Don't be damned with anything else. But I
Lame.
feel like Scorsese has a more authentic view of New York too, and they probably have that just like New Yorker respect. Like, hey,
Hey, and I mean, being the sassy sassy stands. It is a tongue twister. Right?
See?
did you
uh,
ever say it right at the beginning?
No.
Did we just scoop past
Well, we're
it?
fine. Hey, so if you're still here,
Hello.
the sassy sassy stands. That is
Yeah.
I Jesse,
I'm Frank.
Brandon.
and we are the Chronic Canon.
I-
Anyway, the sassy stands.
Yeah, I kept saying sassy sands.
I think that there's a lineage you can trace between Scorsese, Spike Lee, and the Safdies even. Like you can see that all of these people have this very authentic view of New York City.
Do we know how the Safdies feel about Spike?
Oh, they love him.
Did you?
Oh, yeah.
Are we just assuming?
They're big fans of Do the Right Thing. I know that.
Okay.
I've read that.
Good enough.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I have
I-
faith in
No,
them.
they're big old Spike fans.
Good.
I'm pretty sure.
I feel like
Safties, please tell us.
yeah, at Chronic Canon or the Chronic Canon at gmail.com.
Yes, and
Let
that's
us
the
know.
Twitter handle for all you
Yeah.
noobs out there.
Yeah. Sorry. I'm the Twitter noob. I don't even know what the fuck's going on. But the sassy, safety, sussy stands. I never say it. That is
Well,
a
I was
tongue
saying
twister.
how they like the
Uh,
Safties integrate just that organic quality to their movies too.
I think if any person in America, maybe this is stupid of me to believe, but I feel like if there are any people who are going to get to the heart of like such a like complicated issue ever, it's probably going to be a person who's like lived in New York most of their life.
Yes.
You're looking at least in like New York City,
Yeah.
which does include the 5 boroughs. I confirmed the other day. We were all arguing at a family picnic, just like, is that all New York City? How does that work? What are the boroughs? I'm just looking it up. But it's the largest.
Only New Yorkers have those arguments, or non-New Yorkers have those
Exactly.
arguments.
So sorry, New Yorkers. That's probably embarrassing.
Sorry, Spike. Sorry.
Sorry.
I'm
Jesus
patting him
Christ.
on the back.
He hated it, and now he liked it a little.
He's laughing.
What's happening?
You're telling us about your family argument.
Fucking no. I'm saying that New York is the largest populated city in the country, and you have like the most diverse grouping of people in the country, and you have what was like the birthing ground of the new early millennium of immigrants, and you have this complicated history within the city of going through so many different phases. Like, I think if there were people who would be tuned into the larger issues in a country, it's like it's going to be those people who see it more like in front of them all the time and have some just like natural understanding. It's an understanding that would be ingrained in them the same way ignorance is in others, or the opposite of us who have to like learn about it in other ways, you know? So I guess lucky you guys for being born in New York. I don't know. Or thanks for making movies.
Well, they certainly give us a very, like I said, authentic view of New York. We can see it through their eyes.
But
In
I
a
think
way.
it's like more than New York, too.
Oh, big time. Well, it's America.
Yeah.
So at least specifically in this movie,
I feel like
in the
all his-
microcosm of the Bed-Stuy neighborhood in Brooklyn.
Yeah. One block, one day, just one whole existence.
One death.
One existence. One tragedy.
One
It's fine.
tragedy,
Just
more
kidding. Like
specifically.
1,000 tragedies, but one really bad one.
One highlighted one in the film.
Yeah. So, I don't know, fucking somebody else talk.
I do want to give a big shout, since we haven't brought it up much yet, to Ernest Dickerson, because holy goddamn mother of God is this good looking.
Mhm.
This movie is one of the most well shot.
That's cinematographer.
Yes.
Mm.
Also the director of Juice.
I was going to say, this movie definitely spawned like a really like clear wave of inspiration. Like Boys in the Hood feels like almost a follow-up to this movie. And the West Coast
Riding a
version.
wave.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then I think like Juice fits in that.
Friday is somewhere in there too.
I honestly do
Despite
think
that it's a
fits
much
in it.
lighter movie.
Belly.
Belly, yep.
And then like Bamboozle. Round it out.
Bamboozled shakes things up.
These are all movies we like watched and talked about and stuff recently, or at least in the last couple months. So I think that's why I see that. But like, obviously, this movie's huge and influential, and Ernest Dickerson definitely picked up a thing or two as a director here.
Yeah.
Like, it's clear it has an influence on him, but he certainly knows how to shoot
I think
this
he must have
fucking
had
movie.
a part of it like in a big way, because man, it's just the lens of this movie is just perfect. Like, there's not a single shot that I would like say is even bad. Obviously, Spike has a big role in composing a lot of the shots with him, I'm sure, but the way that they are the way they're lit specifically, I accented this viewing because I thought the lighting in every single shot was so on point.
It feels hot.
It's very hot.
Like the movie makes
The
me
color
more
palette
sweaty.
is very distinct too.
It's reflecting the story perfectly.
That celluloid is gorgeous.
Mm-hmm.
You feel the heat in this movie, I will say. You can definitely
It's a
feel
sweaty
how hot
movie.
it is.
Our friend Birdman has highlighted sweaty movies plenty of times as being just a point of interest
Yeah.
in
It's
the subgenre of movies, and I think Do the Right Thing is toward the top of the sweaty
should
movies
be.
category.
This should be the top of the every movies category.
You're right.
It's certainly one of the most important movies ever made, and you could make arguments for it being the most important.
I was gonna
This should be
say,
taught in film school, not the fucking Birth of a Nation.
I have met plenty of people who not even specifically film school, but social classes and things. Will watch Do the Right Thing. I mean, like obviously, it's surely taught in film schools too, not just for like the narrative content, but certainly for the filmmaking. Like I've been saying, like the editing too. It's all amazing.
And if you want to talk about like how to construct characters, a
Yes.
setting, have a variety of storytelling.
How do you
that's
blend
like,
all those worlds in one? Like, how do you? It's almost
It's
breaking the
seamless.
worlds of traditional storytelling, or breaking the rules of traditional storytelling, yet somehow working within. It's like having to know the rules to break them.
Yeah.
That's literally that, and he does it perfectly here.
I think like people, we do respect when it comes to things like art, differences in opinion. So I think like your opinion of the movie, like I understand if people maybe don't like it, like literally fine, like you're crazy, but fine. But
Like,
I
it's not
don't think you
connecting.
can argue like the importance. I literally think that is an indisputable fact that this is one of the most important movies ever made.
Absolutely.
Yes.
Because it's still so relevant to the zeitgeist
Yeah.
today, and not just what's happening in reality, but even culturally and filmically, and like Spike Lee's place in history and everything about it. Like it is one of the most important movies ever made.
I think it's a responsibility as a human being to see it.
I'd put it up there as one of the few,
It's an essential film. There's no question about it.
whether you like it or not, I guess.
It was something that I wish that I had seen around. I wish it had been introduced to me the same way movies like Friday and Boys in the Hood were sort of introduced to me. It's just sort of like rite of passage movies where it's like, oh, how old are you? And you haven't seen Friday yet? Boy, sit down. Come here. You haven't seen Boys in the Hood? Ricky, come here. Sit down. You're in for it. So it's like, I don't know. I feel like this is a movie that I just wish I had been incubating on for so much longer than I have now, because I want to run it dry. Like I still want to go and watch it again. I feel like there's still so much to garner and so much to learn from this, and I don't want to miss out. And I don't know, man. I feel like this movie is something that I should have been hearing about more in terms of just like the zeitgeist of filmmaking. I used to watch like the Cinefix list and stuff like that, and now that like I think about it, just like when I think about like when I've heard about some of the best movies of all time, Do the Right Thing is not something that I had heard of, and it wasn't until much later in my life that I had even recognized that it was a thing, and I think that it is a disservice because it is so important.
It's a cinematic history, if you're looking at it from that
Yes.
perspective, and history in general. It's a major disservice.
Damn.
Not enough people have seen this, at least in our generation, for sure. Like
Yeah.
I don't run into many people my age that are like, "Oh yeah, Do the Right Thing." I love
Yeah,
that movie.
Totally.
Even if they've heard of it, they're like, "Oh, I've never seen it." you know?
Right. Like they it definitely never stops giving. Like it's a gift that keeps on giving.
I think the
Like-
older we get too, and the more we learn about the world, the more poignant and
It-
thought provoking the movie gets. Honestly,
It's,
I mean,
it's like,
Spike Lee himself uploaded a little. Oh, sorry.
yeah, he has a new short film called "I Can't Breathe," which coincides
yeah,
the footage of George Floyd with Radio Raheem.
that's not.
So he's been saying it, and I think that if anything, what has happened this year, this month, this week, has shown us that he can't stop saying what's happened, because if he stopped 30 years ago, then why is it happening now?
Right.
You know what I mean?
Not enough people are saying it.
Not
It
enough
shouldn't
people are
just
saying
be
it.
that.
And I will say, one of the, like, when I originally proposed making this episode, it was like 2 weeks from when we are recording it right now. And I remember it was fucking a devastating conversation to have. But I brought up, to the boys, like, hey, I don't know about necessarily recording, because we've been incubating on doing a episode like highlighting Black cinema and Black history, and we've been, over the course of a couple of months, have been watching like black movies made by Black directors starring Black people, and that was like slated to be our next episode to record after Goodfellas.
Just by chance.
And we even watched Spike Lee movies and talking about Do the Right Thing, just because it's like, hey, It's another one to add to the list that's super important.
I think that Do the Right Thing is part of the lineage that led to the Chronic canon, honestly. I think that trip plays a part in this whole thing.
I mean, it was certainly one that bonded us together as in terms of film and made it beyond film.
If it wasn't
us.
for you guys, I wouldn't have this movie necessarily. I'm sure at some point down the line I would have seen it, but had it not been for Frank showing it to me years down the line, and then for Frank and I and Nick taking you to New York to see it, I almost think of this movie as a bonding tool in my life and like building relationships and building like good relationships with people.
In a way,
and that's only been a revelation I've come to within the last year or so within that trip and everything. But when I think about it, I'm like, yeah, like this movie is just a representation of that community and love and hope, but in the face of severe oppression and tyranny and tragedy.
So I had apprehensions about doing an episode highlighting Black cinema and Black history, given what happened with George Floyd had just happened, and the protest and the riots had just started. And I just remember Frank being like, "Hey, we got a week to record. Unfortunately, this is not anything new, and who knows? Maybe a week from now, it's not necessarily something that is so prevalent that it's something that needs to be touched upon. Like it might be old news, which and that might sound insensitive, but I think that it is literally just pointing at that this isn't news. It's only news now because people are done being quiet about it.
Yeah.
But this is something that has been going on and repeating itself, and it's just, I mean, you can chalk it up to just like how we treat school shootings, where it's like a week of outrage, and then it's like, all right, I mean, what are we gonna do?
This
and
is not
then
the
you keep
first
moving.
person killed by police this year. Like,
No.
what? It's it's the powder keg that's waiting to go off. It's been sitting here waiting for the moment.
Yep.
I think if COVID didn't just happen, I don't know if we'd be here. People were already in this weird state of the world, and then this extra layer of like extra fucked up. Like, it's not even just like got shot a lot of times, got beaten to death. That 8.5, almost 9 minutes. Like, that's a long time where a lot of different things could have happened. That is not an impulse decision.
No.
That is a calculated attack. That is something otherworldly.
Well,
that is something different, and that is the thing that just like no more. Like, literally, what is going on?
Because you can't look at that video and think anything different.
Having sat
haven't
through that
watched
8
it.
minutes and 40, I haven't watched it either, for the record.
When
I heard that
I
it
should.
was,
I probably should.
I heard originally that it was just, a video of a black person being killed by a police officer, assumed it was a shooting, and then was told, wait,
Listen,
no.
hey.
And that was the most
not
disturbing,
watching,
weighted moment.
Not watching when it first comes out, I get it. Because it's like, I just saw one of these 3 weeks ago. I think I'm okay. I'm watching another one. But it was, I didn't originally, I saw that it happened, and I saw a tweet that had the video, and personally decided, I'm good. I don't want to watch that. And then I went down a little bit further, and it was quoting some of the things that he was saying, and then I felt like I had to watch it.
I think I'm gonna.
So I did watch it.
Well, if anything, maybe if it seems a bit too heavy for you, go with the 2-minute Three Brothers, Radio Raheem, Eric Garner, and George Floyd, Spike Lee short film.
That'll do the trick. The things that he says when he's verbally saying that he cannot breathe. He's choking, and he's pleading for his life, and he calls out to his mom at one point, which is just
That's
fucking heartrending. But not on top of that, there's a woman recording, crying and begging to the police officer to get her knee off of his neck, and he just looks at her, and that's it.
Well,
and I think that I think that the internet, while it is this crazy tumultuous thing, I think it's the most fucking beautiful thing on this planet. Because if people did not see that video, then I don't think we'd be at where we're at right now. Same with Ahmaud Arbery, the man that was shot going on a jog a couple of weeks ago. If people hadn't seen that video of him just blatantly being attacked, those two people who originally had gotten off on self-defense wouldn't be in jail right now. So the internet is important.
It's the only power that people have right now because the government doesn't know how to seize it yet. They're literally trying.
They're trying to pass acts as we speak to like censor the internet.
And it's all we got. It's the Wild West. It's our last bastion of hope to find new ground. And it's crazy to think too that the real call and everything for George Floyd was being suspected of using a counterfeit bill. That I mean, Radio Raheem was, at the end of the day, he was just playing radio. Like, that's all that it was for a while.
That's
Like,
what in the end, when the crowd is just yelling at Sal, not
he
even
played-
like
he
at
was
the
just
police.
playing his radio.
He got killed for playing his radio. That's all he wanted to do. Like, that's it.
Radio
And
Raheem.
sometimes it doesn't even matter. Sometimes it's you're walking to the store. Sometimes you might be selling cigarettes. Sometimes you might use a $20 bill that might not look right, but it shouldn't cost you your life.
And it is a known fact that most people who use counterfeit bills have no idea they're using counterfeit bills because
They
that's
get
how
cycled into the system.
because that's how they work. Like, what the fuck?
Watch the movie L'Argent
Yeah.
if you want to know how fucked up money can get.
Can I quote one quick thing from the director's notes?
Please.
Yes.
Radio Raheem is the misunderstood black youth. He's lost like a lot of black youth. Their value systems are all screwed up. And then later he also said, in my eyes, there are no winners in this one. Black burns down the pizzeria, but so what? Radio Raheem is dead or paralyzed, and the conditions we live under have not gotten any better. This is when he's still working out the script.
He hadn't figured it out. Radio Raheem is definitively dead in the movie.
Yes.
Yeah.
There's no...
They hold on it too. They do not cut away.
I'm going to read one more thing that I think really is probably the most important thing that I can read from the notes that I have quick access to. What I'm really talking about is a feeling of helplessness or powerlessness, that who you are and what effect you can have on things is absolutely nil, zero, jack shit, nada. And I think that is true of most people as individuals. But what we're seeing, what we see in the movie, what we will see time and time again, it's that when people can come together. And obviously, that applies for people who are doing bad things. They can come together too. But you just got to keep fighting love and hate. We're going to keep being
they're
at
never
war
not going to coexist.
It's always one or the other.
until we
apparently.
become
Can't have
one
without
or
the
explode.
Other. Yep.
One or the other. We're in this ride or die.
And that goes back to not just the movie being the most complicated thing ever, but life being
Existence.
the most complicated thing ever. And it's
There's so many
painful.
things
It's
that-
painful. But there's so many things that are also joyous and beautiful and wonderful and reminders of why life is worth living and worth pursuing the fight for others especially. Like in my case, because it's horrifying feeling the privilege that I have. It's unreal.
I'd say the circumstances in which these protests have been brought up are abhorred, but I will say that nothing has, at the same time, filled me with so much just joy to see not just people like me, but the world itself like turning on its head for this thing, and to see that tragedy can bring people together, to see that, yes, this terrible thing that happened, but look at how we are going to come out of it. We are no longer being unheard. We are no longer going to settle for less. This was it. And we're making sure that it doesn't stay that way. The fact that all of these legislations are starting to be passed and that there's real reforms being made and people still aren't done, I think is amazing. That people are still out there on the streets. They've been protesting every day in Detroit.
They have to.
Every single day.
I hope if anybody's listening to this and you've been going to protest, keep going. There's a second wave of us coming.
Don't stop.
Where there's people who are I hope so. I'm ready to go to later ones. Like, I have that very clearly in mind. Like,
I was
let's
just at a protest last weekend.
you gotta keep it momentum moving. So when people get tired, take a break. We'll hop in. Second wave people, get ready. We're all coming.
Second string, line up. We're going in.
Why not?
Because it doesn't stop with George Floyd. It's not just about George Floyd. There are so many others. There's so many others. And the fact that while this movie can specifically resound to what happened to George Floyd, it
It's
overall
terrifying.
resounds to what is happening in the country right now, just in general, on almost every level. Because you could replace those names and those people with almost anybody, and I think you're going to get the same effects.
They name dropped Trump in the movie.
Yep.
In the movie.
That's the and they talk about the ice caps melting. Spike Lee somehow has
it
it's
is
like the most
crazy.
prescient movie ever made.
They even touch on rioting and the destruction of property.
Yeah.
Because that seems to be the conflict of this whole thing for some reason. Not the fact that there's systemic racism in the country and that there's absurd levels of police brutality going on, but the fact that as a result, property has to be destroyed. Seems to be the huge the thing that I'm seeing, at least in terms of my circle and like the internet in general. That seems to be where like the good and the bad people seem to split up. Where it's like, oh, we all can agree that this was bad, but why are we destroying property from people who had nothing to do with it? But it's everything. It all has to do with it.
First of all, 99% of these businesses are insured. And second of all, like, I know it's not just about the money, just like Sal says in the movie, but like at the end of the day, like most people are going to be okay. And most banks own most of those businesses too. So really you're hurting banks more than the people, but whatever. Beyond that, what else? Like that's the problem of this systemic way everything is set up. You can't punch upward. If you start hitting cops, things are going to fall apart. If you start hitting the people around you, you're just hurting your allies. And like punching down is what it's designed to do, but like we're at the point where it's like that's not an option. So there's nothing else left. I don't know what you want people to do. You got to listen to the people who supply everything. We are the people that are being governed. I don't know.
I think that the peaceful route has been tried. The people have been silently taking their knees. People have been raising their fist,
and
they get fired.
Is still the first attempts, even in these destructive times that are arising. No event has been planned as a riot. That is not how it works. Peaceful protests are still happening daily across the world. It is only when things escalate, and people aren't escalating people. We're beyond that.
When tensions rise, when you don't let the people, if this is a country where we pride ourselves on letting each other be heard, and when you try to stop that, I think is when opposition comes. Just like when you tell people you're gonna take away their guns, an army's gonna raise up. So why do you expect when you tell people that they can't sit there in the street and scream about their pain and scream about the truths and scream about their realities, why do you think you won't be met with some sort of opposition when that's all that they have dealt with their entire lives? Like, why is it expected for one person to be complacent while the other can just sit back and slowly learn over time? Like, oh, after enough Kaepernicks, maybe eventually the NFL would have got the idea. But apparently after maybe like a week and a half of peaceful protests / riots, the NFL has already changed its motto on whether or not players can protest.
Yeah.
It's like you're not listening unless we're destroying the things you care about. So shouldn't you be looking at yourself? Why is this what you respond to? Why is this the thing that gets your reaction?
Because the only thing that you can actually do for change is to look up. Never down, never straight ahead. You always got to look up. That's where the problems are trickling down from. And it's fucking bananas. So it's like, create the avenues so this doesn't have to be the solution. People don't want destruction. But you're not leaving a lot of options, and you see it at the end. Would people who are opposed to like the morality of rioting, whatever, or if that's right or wrong, would you rather it be Sal and his sons are killed? That's the question to ask yourself. Like, and should it be one or the other? Is that just eye for an eye? Like, literally, no. Nobody wants it, but that's where it's at because the police left. They got out of there. And what are you going to do? You're going to start killing the police so then everybody goes down and then more people are murdered? Just burn a building and maybe listen. I don't know.
This is like, with the cards that you're dealt, that's just that's all that you have. So you can't look at a situation and go, well, why are the only options Sal or the pizza shop? They didn't choose whether it to be Sal or the pizza shop. Someone that they cared about is dead, and the only people feasibly responsible for it are standing right in front of them.
Because you can't actually go against the police.
Do you just go, well, all right, and go back home?
Sure.
Only for it to happen again the next day?
That's the thing.
It's like, what makes this different? How do we stop ourselves from feeling this pain again? What do? We put some sort of physical output. It's just like any artist with their art. You get sad, you write a poem, you make a song, you make a movie. When you hurt people, They want to show their pain. And if that's how they have to do it, then it's how they have to do it. If you won't listen to the words that they're saying, then you will listen to their actions. Because you can interpret me saying, like, hey, hands up, don't shoot, Black Lives Matter, all you want. But you can't misinterpret me burning down a building. Because that is just what it is. It's a destruction of property.
It's a generally conceived idea that life is a precious commodity that we should be lucky we all have. Then, like, I don't know, man. You got to stop taking it from people, I guess. And another, just to harken back to, you described the opening. You taking the feeling, you got to physically communicate it. I think Spike Lee is extremely lucky to have the life he's had where he got to express these feelings in a very concentrated way on a large platform with a lot of help from a lot of people, and like got to constructively create something to reflect upon this. Like, he's very lucky, and we're lucky that he got so lucky. And that's bananas. That has to be a situation of being lucky. But I'm glad that he got to do it. We need more of that. Not crash. I don't know.
And not
more
crash.
More do the right things, less crash. Crash won Best Picture. That's funny.
No way.
Yeah, beat Brokeback Mountain. It's fine.
Wait, but Brokeback Mountain's not a bad movie, is it?
No.
I thought it was good.
I don't think so. I've never seen it.
Isn't it a lady director?
No, Ang Lee. No.
Oh, Ang Lee, the Hulk guy.
Yes.
We love him.
Sure. Spike, you like Ang Lee?
He's
just
asleep. He's not really paying attention anymore. He heard us lamenting about the times, and he's like, oh, yeah, you mean what I've been trying to tell everybody for the last 31 years? And then he passed out. So now we're just sort of sitting here stewing in it. Because where do you go from here? Because there's no real way to definitively end it, because it's not over, because it's still happening right now as we're speaking. But
and like, this is just a movie, but it's also like it almost achieves the Cassavetes thing better than any Cassavetes movies could. It's more real than real. Like, this movie excels to such a weird plane of existence that it's like literally beyond reality, and it like encompasses everything that between the artificial and the realistic. And I don't know, man. Just is it ever gonna end? I hope so. This movie theoretically, this movie should be irrelevant one day, and maybe we can look back and just be like, that was a nice stepping stone.
Hopefully.
But hopefully, you know what? Yeah, hopefully. I believe.
I want to read those quotes from the end of the movie, the Martin Luther King one and the Malcolm X one, because I do, in a way, I think that the same way that it perfectly encompasses the whole movie, I think that these quotes also pretty much encompass what we've been talking about this whole time, about just the duality of everything, and about how somehow if you can merge these two things into one and come together, that's how change happens, and that's how good can come from it. So please just give me one moment to Google it.
Because I think this movie somehow approaches with nothing but empathy, even against its most vile characters. I think Spike is practicing some degree of empathy, of being like,
I didn't feel that for the cops one bit. But
not the cops.
might be
Not the fucking
right
cops.
now.
He even wrote in the director's notes early on, he was thinking about like making them crack dealers and making them like clearly crooked cops. So I think he pulls that back a little bit by just making them assholes to create a more nuanced approach, even amongst just like, these are the vile villains. But I think everyone else, he at least like tries to understand where this ignorance can come from, where this difference of value in humanity can come from. And I think by giving it that time, as hard as it can be to stomach, it's the only way to lead to a road of actual change, because we have to figure out how to live with the duality of solution and the duality of people. And
Subjectivity.
it needs to, in a way, like subjectivity needs to become objectivity and vice versa. The yin and the yang. We need to find the balance of everything. And I think this movie did find it. Somehow Spike found it.
He figured it out.
For 2 hours, he found a balance in the world.
The first quote is from Martin Luther King Jr., and it's the one that appears. It says, Violence as a way of achieving racial justice is both impractical and immoral. It is impractical because it is a descending spiral ending in destruction for all. The old law of an eye for an eye leaves everybody blind. It is immoral because it seeks to humiliate the opponent rather than win his understanding. It seeks to annihilate rather than to convert. Violence is immoral because it thrives on hatred rather than love. It destroys community and makes brotherhood impossible. It leaves society in a monologue rather than dialogue. Violence ends by destroying itself. It creates bitterness in the survivors and brutality in the destroyers. It follows that with the quote from Malcolm X. I think there are plenty of good people in America, but there are also plenty of bad people in America. And the bad ones are the ones who seem to have all the power and be in these positions to block things that you and I need. Because this is the situation, you and I have to preserve the right to do what is necessary to bring an end to that situation. And it doesn't mean that I advocate violence, but at the same time, I am not against violence and self-defense. I don't even call it violence when it's self-defense. I call it intelligence.
I think for 90 minutes he's making the Martin Luther King quote, and in the last 30 he acknowledges the impossibility of ignoring Malcolm X.
Yes.
Those are both as important as the other. They're both correct.
Because they're both trying to convey the same thing. The fact that it is, as much as it's about love and brotherhood, it's also about perseverance and self-preservation. Is both of those things. If people had completely listened to either Martin Luther King or Malcolm X, the civil rights movement wouldn't have gotten as far as it did.
Mm-hmm.
There were riots for I think 6 to 8 days after Martin Luther King was assassinated. And after 6 or 8 days of riots is when the Civil Rights Act was passed. But up until then, those peaceful protests and those marches that Martin Luther King had led were so important just to be ingrained within our society as to why the civil rights movement is what it is today. Both were necessary. Both needed to be done and both needed to be said, because at the end of the day, I don't think you're ever going to listen to just one side. Like, you need to hear from both. And I think Spike Lee does that amazingly. Even trying to show us things that you don't think are going to matter, like the growing disdain of the Asians in the community, the one random jukebox battles that Radio Raheem has with the Puerto Ricans. Like, you don't think that those things matter. You think it's just another day in the life. And the fact that it is, but it also matters at the same time, because those are the same people that witnessed the tragedy at the end.
And came together
Despite opposition, despite fucking sweet Dick Willie and the other black dude sitting on the corner talking shit about the Koreans the whole time. They meet at the end, and at a moment where things could have exploded still, they took a moment and they said, we're the same, right? We're the same. Come on, look at us.
He said, we're not white, we're black.
And even though, it's a bit of it's the little moment of tension relief where you see everybody laugh and it's like, oh, okay, they're not gonna burn down the goddamn grocery store. But at the same time, if I saw it happen, I was like, that is just another building block, because you saw the seeds being sowed there too. So it's amazing what it does, the way that it presents everything to you evenly and what makes you sit with it, which, like I said, I think is a thing that hung me up last time, but something that I am revering this time. I think it's amazing.
Me too.
Same.
But this week I figured we wouldn't do, any recently watched or recommendations or anything like that. I guess I'll just say
We should be blunt though.
Oh, all right. Let's be blunt. How do we feel about Do the Right Thing? Does it belong in the canon?
Yes.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly so.
Yeah.
Undoubtedly so. I laughed at the Let's Be Blunt because I forgot we had to do it, because I felt like we were just saying the whole time how much we love this fucking movie.
Because we did. This is the one movie that's been in my top 10 since I've had a top 10. I like toting that fact. And I thought about that recently, and I won't pretend it wasn't in light of recent events, but I was like, it's been there this long. I don't want it to leave. This is probably just a top 5 movie. I should call that now. And after watching it, definitely, it is. It's as informative to me as anything else, and beyond movies. And I think those are my favorite movies, the ones that affect me as a human being, and not just as I love movies.
Yes. Yes.
I mean, I love those two. Don't get me wrong. Like, okay, that is actually Heat is more that. Like, goddamn, this is movies at the best
Yeah.
time. I love it so much, but like, it doesn't really inform that. Like process. I like metals.
I work in metals.
Yeah.
I'm a
I
salesman.
can't. I'm a heatonist. I have to bring it up.
Heatonist.
Yeah. Though
But
I
they're,
do
they're
think
they're neck and neck. They're because two totally different things. One is like the most important movie, and one's just like the most fun I'll ever have watching something.
Obviously, Do the Right Thing is the fun one, and Heat is super important.
Exactly. Well, I mean, Capitalism Bad, the movie.
Capitalism is bad.
The movie.
And Identity.
Another day. So, yeah, it's in the canon, baby.
It's in the canon. Jesse, any thoughts? Thought you were about to say something.
basically just this podcast is nearly 2 hours. If you listen to this, you should have just watched Do the Right Thing. So I'm sorry we wasted your time.
Well, and now you don't have an excuse. Fucking cue it up right now.
You probably should have watched it already. We're a spoiler-filled podcast.
Oopsie daisies.
Yeah, sorry about that one.
But you can find us at the Chronic Canon on Twitter.
At Chronic Canon.
At Chronic Canon on Twitter. We're going to have a Google document pinned, and it's going to have a bunch of different resources. So, if you don't have money, you can't donate, sign a petition, or, look up a fucking local protest in your area.
At the very least, there's things that you can educate yourself with in there.
There are things on there that you can do. So we
You'd
would
be
really
going out of your way to not see those things.
So instead of a recommendation for any movies that we recommend or we're forcing you, you have to go and click on that link and do something, because this only stops when we do, and we got to keep it going.
Donate your time of what you can.
Yeah, or money.
Anything.
Fucking show up.
Even
Protests need bodies. Even if you don't want to fucking sit there and march, bring some water, bring some snacks. When I went on the protest that I went to last week, there were people like literally set up in stations where they're just like, "Hey, you need some water? You need some
All of it
fucking
was
like
free.
some snacks?
All
Like
of
here you
it
go,
was
here you
free.
go, here you go. You can
Makes me
do
wanna
do
cry.
something. Trust me, right now your silence is everything. If you don't think that people see you not saying shit, they do.
Because
I
you
promise.
can do something. At some
Anything.
capacity, everybody can do something.
Half the shit is just with the click of a button. So please,
Very easy.
Black lives
what we wanna
will
say.
always matter.
Black Lives Matter.
Black Lives Matter.
We love you.
We love everybody. This is it. This is the end of
We
the
don't
Chronic
love
Canon.
everybody. Well, hold on. I don't love the man who's murdered some people, and I don't love a lot of. Yeah, we don't love everybody.
All right, we don't love everybody.
We love everybody
but
who's
we
doing the
love-
right thing.
We do think Black Lives Matter. So
Yeah.
there is that. Also,
Truth.
ACAB.
That is the
Yeah.
truth, Ruth.
Hey,
All right, we're closing off. We're signing off. This is it.
I'm Frank.
I'm Jesse.
Brandon, goodbye.